Well, what do you guys think? We've got the new magnets on the board here, and it looks much different when you put these things on the board and just kind of bring some color to it. And I think it looks pretty good. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below about the new magnets and stuff. So I think I'm going to get some made as well for the like a World of Outlaws one and some numbers as well for their full-time guys for later on in the season. So let me know what you think about the new magnets down in the comments section below. Today we're talking about Outlaw Speedway, race number 16 of 2024 with Kubota High Limit Racing, doing a little bit of a recap. And then we're going to talk about race 17 at Utica-Rome Speedway, which happened on Friday night. I know this is pretty late. You know, we raced Friday, and then I didn't upload anything yesterday. I had some family stuff to take care of. So here we are on Sunday, giving you guys a little bit of a recap of what happened. Now, let me know if you like this style better. I didn't write everybody's qualifying times. I didn't write all the heat race, stuff. I just put the feature finishing order, and we'll talk about the features, kind of just to speed this up a little bit more. And also with these new magnets, I feel like it makes it look a little bit better when we just have the feature finish. In red, I have where they started at, and then in green, obviously, is the prize money that they won for this particular race. So Outlaw Speedway, first time I've ever been there, and for 8 of the full-time high-limit drivers, it was their first time there as well. In my opinion, the race was actually pretty good. Like, the track was actually good as far as, lanes go. Like, there was a top, there was a bottom, there was guys working in the middle, there were sliders. It was a pretty racy track. The one issue was obviously the dust, and that was kind of a big talking point by everybody on Facebook and X and all that stuff, right? People did not like the dust, and understandably, it was tough to see off of turn 4. That camera angle that you guys were watching from on Flow. It was either maybe the same for me or maybe even a little bit worse. I couldn't really see off 4 very well. I was positioned behind the flag stand, which was all the way into turn 1 almost. So it made it kind of tough to see. But other than that, besides the dust, I thought the racing was actually really good at Outlaw Speedway. We'll see if it is on the schedule next year. I haven't heard anything about that, but pretty good crowd there as well. So Brad Sweet, he would end up getting the win in this one. He started back in the 3rd position and about halfway. Actually, I think it was exactly halfway. Lap leaders were Zeb Wise, 1 through 15, and Brad Sweet, 16 through 30. And so Sweet, was able to put his car about anywhere on the racetrack and make it work like we've seen so many times this year. It did look like Zeb Wise was potentially going to win this race early on, but traffic came into play. James McFadden came into play, and then obviously Brad Sweet came into play in the middle part of the race as well. But Zeb, it was a great night for him. He ends up in the 3rd position, a night that he desperately needed. His best finish of the year. I think either tied his best finish of the year or it was his best finish of the year. And so good to see him kind of get back up on the podium, get inside the top 5, and lead some laps. And we kind of knew going in that it was going to be a good track for Zeb Wise. He had won there in the past with the All-Stars. And, he looked like he was a potential threat to win this thing, but at the end, faded back a little bit, and the 2 dominant cars kind of showed it who they were, that being Brad Sweet and Tyler Courtney. So Brad, once he took the lead, I was a little bit worried, okay, well, he's going to run away and hide with this thing. But Tyler Courtney was actually really fast in this race and came to call late in the race and was closing in really good on the inside of the racetrack. And but Brad was just super good at getting through traffic, and it was enough for him to hold on and get the win. And it still was kind of close there at the end on the last corner. It looked like Tyler ran the bottom nice, and Brad kind of got held up a little bit by traffic. And they came pretty close. That wasn't like side by side. Maybe like 3 or 4 car lengths between the 2 of them. But it was still an entertaining race, I thought. 2 different leaders. And the track was pretty racy with, and just got to kind of think about not the dust side of it, but the actual racing on the track was actually pretty good. So Brad Sweet, he would get the win for $12,000. And then it was Tyler Courtney from 5th. Zeb Wise led the first 15 laps. He ended up in 3rd. Good run for James McFadden. He ended up in the 4th position after starting in 2nd and challenging for the lead early. Never took the lead, but got pretty close a couple times. Ends up in the 4th spot. And then it was Anthony Macri back there in 5th. I believe that was his first ever time to Outlaw Speedway. And so a good run for Anthony Macri. And he is going to be a threat for the win next week when we get to Port Royal Speedway for $75,000 to win. And he is definitely going to be probably, as far as the odds makers go, he's going to have the best odds to win that race. Justin Peck, he would end up in the 6th position, and just another solid run. He has been really good here over the last couple of weeks, or last couple of races, I should say. He was 3rd at Tri-City. He was 6th at Kokomo, and then he was 6th again here at Outlaw, and he had another good run at Utica-Rome, which we'll talk about after this board. It's been a solid couple of week or two here for Justin Peck. So Corey Day, he started 14th, ended up in 7th, and he was not bad considering these New York tracks are kind of places that are foreign to him as far as the track surface goes. Very, very slick, very dusty, and he was able to make it work. 14th to 7th for Corey Day, and still waiting for him to crack back into victory lane, but he's showing that he's still a consistent driver and able to keep that car up inside the top 10, even at tracks he's never been to. This type of track right here was one that I was kind of worried about. More like Utica-Rome also was a track I was worried at, but we'll see where he ended up in that one here in just a few minutes. Spencer Baston, he ended up in the 8th position after starting in 6th, so just a solid run for him. Parker Price Miller gets a 9th place finish, and we know that he is still working without a crew chief. It's kind of a group effort. It's kind of a crew chief by committee over there in the 9P pit between him and his crew guys. So a good run for him in 9th. And then Casey Kane, he had a good run as well. He finished up in the 10th position. Solid run for Casey Kane, but I don't think it continued at Utica-Rome. But still a good run, a top 10 that was much needed for Casey Kane and that number 9 team. Rico Abreu ended up in 11th. He was not a factor in this one. Cy Lynch, a solid run in 12th after starting in 9th. And then Brent Marks, he was the hard charger in this race. He drove from 22nd up to 13th. Did not make it out of the heat race. And I'll tell you what, there was a couple guys that struggled in the heat race because some of these New York locals are actually really, really good. And it's not even like the local guys. I mean, there's guys from Canada that were good. There's guys from PA that just run in New York that are good. But those guys that run up on these racetracks, they really do have a little bit of advantage. And we saw that early on in the heat races. And, Zimbardi right behind Brent Marks, he was solid. He was in the dash. He was the Durst dice roll driver. He drove right by a couple of guys in the heat race and finished up in 2nd. Was he 2nd or did he win? I can't remember, but Jared Zimbardi was in the dash. I can't remember exactly how he got there, whether it was a heat race win or if he qualified really well and got in there. But still, Jared Zimbardi was very, very impressive this night. Ends up in 14th, probably wanted a little bit better finish. But for a car that has no stickers on the side of it, no paint, nothing like that, just a number, that's a pretty good run. Also, Mark Smith, not too bad in that Paul Colagiovanni number 10 car. He ends up in 15th after starting 24th. And Jonathan Preston was a guy that really impressed me all weekend long. 16th place. I've never even heard of the guy going into the weekend, and he was solid. He blew right by Corey Day in hot laps. He was decent in the heat race as well. And Jonathan Preston, 18th to 16th. That is something that team should be proud of, and I hope that we see him again the next time we go to New York because he is actually a really, really good driver. Great guy as well. We met him down the pit area at Outlaw Speedway there on Thursday afternoon. Tanner Thorson, he finished up in 17th. Jordan Thomas, another one of those New York local guys that if you give him too much space, he is going to make his way by you, and he's going to make it tough for you to pass him as well. I believe, he ended up winning the B main here in this one. Jordan Poirier, he finished up in the 19th position. I know that I was saying his name wrong early on. I got it wrong in qualifying and in hot laps, but we figured it out afterwards. I watch a lot of hockey, and usually if you see that type of name, it's Poirier, but it's Poirier for Jordan Poirier. So he finished up in 19th. He had a solid weekend. He made both shows. And then you had Jacob Allen. I'm not sure what's going on with these guys right now, but another finish outside the top 20, or I guess he was 20th. I mean, he's been 20th or worse here in a lot of races here recently. I really hope to see those guys pick it up at Port Royal next week. Chris Windham, he finished up in 21st, and I feel bad for Windham because his number on this thing's a little bit smaller than the rest of them. There are a couple that are bigger than the rest, and there's a couple that are smaller than the rest, and Chris Windham, if I order more, which I'm going to, I'm going to make his a little bit bigger for the next batch. Matt Farnham was 22nd. Corey Eliason had to take a provisional to make the show, ended up in 23rd. So started 25th, only gained 2 positions. I thought for sure these guys would be pretty good when it got to New York. I mean, Corey's good there, and Shuttlesworth is used to slick racetracks, and they just did not seem like they could click very well. He struggled at Utica-Rome as well. After having 3 really good finishes in a row, he was 7th or better in 3 straight races going into this event, and then needs a provisional, finishes in 23rd. So Corey Eliason and that team still have some bugs to work out. And then it was Ryan Newton, who was good as well, made both shows out of the heat race, both nights in New York. And then Dylan Norris finished up in 25th position. As we mentioned, the lap leaders were Zeb Wise and Brad Sweet, 1 through 15 and 16 through 30. Hard charger Brent Marks, and the dice roll driver was Jared Zimbardi. So overall, I thought Outlaw Speedway was a pretty good racetrack. Good crowd. They were really getting into it. A pretty rowdy crowd as well. Just the one thing that we could ask for is just a little bit more or a little bit less dust for the people watching at home on Flow and for the fans as well in attendance. But other than that, I thought everything went pretty smoothly. And Yeah, we'll see if we go back there next year. I'm not really sure. I haven't heard anything from any of the executives at High Limit if we're going back or not next year. But I really hope we do get back to New York. I think we will because there's just so many good race fans up there. There's just a lot of race fans as well that are craving 410 sprint car racing, and it was so cool to get them what they wanted there with High Limit Racing. So let's switch boards and let's talk about Utica-Rome Speedway, which happened on Friday night. The big half mile, the first half mile of the season for Kubota High Limit Racing. We'll switch boards and let's talk about that next. Holy cow, that was so much faster than having to rewrite the entire board. These magnets are good for a couple of things. I think they add a little bit to the overall production of this channel now, and just the overall time saving that this channel has with all the writing that I do. So let's get into it with Utica-Rome Speedway, the 17th race of the year, which was on Friday night. We had 40 cars in attendance, and I forgot to mention in the first part here that both races that we had there at Outlaw Speedway and at Utica-Rome were the highest car counts they've ever had for 410 sprint cars at both of those racetracks. For Utica, it was 30 before. We got to 40 this night, and at Outlaw, it was 26, and we got to 36. So really, really good car counts for both of these races, and this one turned out to be relatively, I don't know if exciting was the right word, but, it was kind of, it just didn't really have that sprint car race feel. It was kind of like a little bit slower, especially for a half-mile racetrack. But, I thought it was still an entertaining race, especially with the guy that won. Rico Abreu finally got that first win out of the way. It took 17 races into the year with Kubota High Limit Racing for him to go to victory lane. Obviously, he had already gotten a win with the Outlaws at 81 Speedway, almost got another win with them over at Volusia Speedway Park, but it had taken him this long to get to victory lane. It was only his second podium of the year, but hopefully this is a sign of good things to come for Rico Abreu. He got the win. He led laps 8 through 25 after Brent Marks led laps 1 through 7. As far as the other stuff goes, hard charger was Brad Sweet. He went 9th to 6th, so he was actually tied with 4 other drivers that went up +3. So as you can tell, I feel like they say this a lot in pavement racing, right? But track position was huge at Utica-Rome. I mean, we've seen several times this year where guys can start outside the top 10 and get into the top 5 and get onto the podium. But that was not the case at Utica-Rome. It was just so tough to pass. Your car had to be set up really, really well to be able to maneuver around and get by different guys. And not many guys really had that. Brad Sweet, 9th to 6th. I think, Jordan Thomas, 15th to 12th. Ryan Newton, 16th to 13th, and there was one other guy that went up +3, but it went to Brad Sweet because he finished the farthest ahead. And then dice roll driver was Spencer Baston. He ended up in the 7th position. But yeah, so Rico gets the win, a much, much needed win, and a popular win. A lot of Rico fans up there in the state of New York, so it was a pretty big deal for him to win there. Justin Peck continues the success here. As I mentioned in the very beginning, he was 3rd at Tri-City. He was 6th at Kokomo. He was 6th at Outlaw. And then he finishes 2nd here. And I think if this race was a 30-lap main event, he would have gotten to Rico. I mean, his car looked like it was much better. He just was fighting with James McFadden. He was fighting with Brent Marks for a little bit too long. And by the time that he got clear of those guys, and there was a couple times where he got around a lap car that was kind of holding them up, if a couple of those things don't happen, I think we talk about Justin Peck being a winner at Utica-Rome and his first win of the year. But that's racing, right? I mean, Rico Abreu, he held on. He was able to get the job done. Justin Peck, very happy with a 2nd place finish. Obviously, he wants to get that team to victory lane, but, baby steps, right? I mean, these guys were starting off the year. They were fast, but they had no luck. And then later on, it wasn't luck. They just didn't really have the speed anymore, right? But they seem to have the speed now, and they're getting the luck on their side. We know wins are coming for this team. 3rd spot was James McFadden. He started 5th, so good run. 2 good runs. He was 4th and 3rd, and he said it in victory lane or on his podium interview that those are 2 tracks that normally they do not feel very good at, and he had 2 top 5 runs. So James McFadden, I think he's up to 11th in points already. He's already passed Casey Kane, Corey Eliason, Brenham Crouch, Tanner Thorson, and maybe one other guy. So James McFadden moving up the point standings after missing the first 4 races of the year. Brent Marks, he ended up in 4th after leading the first 7 laps, and that is not something we see too often from Brent Marks. He starts on the pole. He leads the first couple laps. Maybe he'll run 2nd. Maybe he'll run 3rd. But he ran 4th. It just seemed like that car went away a little bit there as the track maybe started to latch up a little bit towards the end of the race. They sprayed a bunch of water down right before the race came out, and they tried to clean off what little bit of rubber they had on there after the B main, and it definitely worked. And it made the track pretty racy for the first couple laps. But Marks, he kind of fell apart there towards the end. Still a fourth place run, not too bad for him at all. Sunshine ended up in the 5th spot after starting 7th, and we already mentioned Brad Sweet, a very rare finish outside the top 5 for him. He finished up in P6. And then there was Spencer Basin, another solid run for him in the 7th position. Him and Parker Price Miller, both of those guys, no top 5s on the weekend, but 2 respectable top 10 finishes, especially considering for Parker, we already mentioned it, no crew chief on that car, and 2 tracks that really were, I feel like the crew chief is almost as important as the driver at those 2 racetracks, and Parker Price Miller with 2 top 10 runs. All 3 of these guys actually with Corey Day in there as well. I mean, they were pretty solid. Good run for Corey Day as well. He was quick time in his flight after a pretty exciting qualifying session, and he ends up in a pretty good position for a $2,200 payday. And then how about Kerry Madsen? He was behind the wheel of that other Paulie Colagiovanni car. His first night at Outlaw, I don't even think he made the show. And then at Utica-Rome, he got it figured out, moved up 1 position and ended up in the top 10. Kerry Madsen continues to show that he should be on some kind of tour. It does not matter right now. That guy has the speed in any car he gets in. It took him a night to get used to this car on a track that is pretty tough to get a hold of, but he figured it out here at Utica-Rome, finished up in 10th. Then it was Anthony Macri and then Jordan Thomas. This guy may be one of the most underrated drivers in the entire country right now in that 79 car, and he's got good equipment. We saw Stuart Friesen last year with the All-Stars, drove that car up to like 4th or 3rd at Utica-Rome. And then Jordan Thomas, he finishes in 12th after starting in 15th. This guy, I think that he needs to travel a little bit more and get his feet wet down there in Central PA and some other places because he is actually a really, really good driver. And also a really good weekend for Ryan Newton. I know that he didn't get the finish he wanted at Outlaw, but a 13th place run after starting 16th, tied for the hard charger, made it through the heat race both nights at 2 tracks he's never been to before. He's been struggling a little bit there in Central Pennsylvania, but a phenomenal weekend for Ryan Newton out of Australia with Kubota Highland Racing this weekend. Danny Dietrich finished up in 14th after missing the show at Outlaw. And so Dietrich, it sounded like the rear end was not squared or something. He hit the wall at a race prior to Outlaw, and they did not get that issue resolved, and they fixed it up for him. Utica-Rome, he went, 14th to 14th. So we already talked about how tough it was to pass, so no surprise to see Dietrich kind of, staying back outside the top 10 even when he started there. So, but good to see him get those issues fixed up and finish inside the top 15. Zeb Wise was 15th. Chris Wyndham, 16th. Jordan Poirier, another guy that finished inside the, he made the show both nights against a really, really stacked field of cars. This guy is also underrated, especially when you say his name right. Very underrated driver. Jordan Poirier, hats off to him. Really cool guy down the pit area. His crew members, they're all French. That is their first language. But it was still fun to be able to see those guys race again. I haven't seen them in a long time. Jacob Allen finished up in 18th. Tanner Thorson, 19th. Then Cy Lynch, Mark Smith, Brenham Crouch, Chad Miller, who won the B-Main, and then Davey Franick, he finished up in 24th. So Utica-Rome, I really like that place. I really do. The little 6-inch man-made curb they have on the top of the racetrack, if they can just keep a little bit more grip in the surface going to the feature, I think that man-made curb could be a factor in the feature. We saw it early. The first 10 or so laps, we saw Justin Peck up there. We saw a couple other guys up there working it. But by the end of the race, it's just kind of, it gets a little bit latched up through the middle and on the bottom, and it's just too fast down there to really run that cushion. But we did see it come into play a lot in qualifying, which was very, very exciting. It was one of those nights where I really wish we had single car qualifying because just watching those guys go around there and try and work that thing to perfection was really, really cool. We saw, Corey Day fly off the racetrack in this race. We saw Brent Marks. He flew off the track in the main event. We saw Justin Peck fly off the track in the main event off of turn number 4. This place was really treacherous. It was tricky. And the wings, they had some serious angle on them, man. I mean, they were rolling onto the racetrack for the feature. They had to be close to max wing angle. We don't see that very often anymore in sprint car racing, but it was really cool to see that happen at Utica-Rome for an absolutely jam-packed crowd. There was so many people there. That was really fun to see as well. But like we said, lap leaders 1 through 7 Marks, 8 through 25 Abreu. Hard charger was Sweet. Dice roll driver was Baston. And 25 lap main event, Rico Abreu gets his first of the year with Kubota Highland Racing. And next up, we head to Port Royal Speedway for the Bob Weicker Memorial. I'm going to make a video documenting the format that we will see for that race. That'll be coming out here later this week, along with some other things we're going to talk about here on the channel as well. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video. Let me know what you think about the new magnets down in the comment section below. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one here on the channel. Thank you very much.